Hello, welcome back to the newest episode of ADHD Generations. Today we have the lovely Helen Sanderson with us. Obviously, Esther, my mum, here as well. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, Helen?
Well, I'm known as the clutter therapist because I'm a psychotherapist and I've been working with people with clutter for nearly 20 years now. Can you believe that? So thank you very much for having me. It's really great to be here. And this is a really relevant topic, not just because a lot of people are talking about it, but because it's something that's so common in the work that I do.
So Helen, I know you've written a book. Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Yes, my book is called The Secret Life of Clutter. And it's called The Secret Life of Clutter because over the years that I've been working with clutter and people's homes and people's selves and personalities, I feel that there's a little secret meaning really under most of our cluttered piles. And there's a little story to be told underneath what we find. And also, so I wrote my book in a set of stories. So it's a set of stories, very easy to read, very accessible, very moving, actually. So it's not a how-to book, although there are some tips in there, but it's really a book of stories because I think clutter has a story to tell.
I'm sure many people watching this podcast today will be thinking exactly the same thing. I'm sure they'll be thinking my clutter has a story to tell.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of started. Where did all of this come from, your kind of interest in clutter?
Well, it started like a lot of organisers will probably tell you, they had a friend who was cluttered and they said, can I help you? Or, let me help. And but I went to art school and I was very interested in installations and spaces, and very interested in how a space can impact how you feel. So I don't know how many art installations you've been to, but it's almost like sometimes going into a church or going into a space that completely transforms your mood or how you feel. So that was kind of really where I started. And then the other extreme is that you go into places that make you feel really down and kind of tense and uneasy. And so, in a way, as an interior designer, I'm always trying to create a space that makes you feel wonderful. But as a clutter therapist, I'm trying to help people get out of a little bit of a stuck rut, where they say they walk into the front door and they feel like their space is draining them. It's so chaotic. They can't find things, all of the stuff that we'll probably go on to talk about. But so, really what I'm enjoy and I'm hoping to achieve is to give people that feeling that they can walk through the front door and actually feel recharged by their home, rather than drained by it.
That's such a lovely, when I was a young person, I lived in quite a cluttered environment. And as I've got older, everything has to be super tidy all the time. And maybe, I don't think I take it too far.
No.
Do I take it too far?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay. But it is all about how you feel in your space, isn't it? So, Lewis, how do you feel in your space?
My space, sometimes it's very cluttered. Sometimes it's nice and everything's got its place. But sometimes those things are piles. Those places are piles, just randomly scattered around my bedroom. But I think as I'm getting older, I think I am getting more inclined to have a tidy environment because I think it does help me feel more at peace and less stressed.
I wonder how much of it is rebelling. So there's lots of different areas, aren't there? So one is having too much stuff, which is clutter, where you can't move. But the other one is mess, which is I haven't got so much stuff, but I'm just not very good at organizing it. And so whether or not I'm not very good at organizing it, or I don't want to organize it because it's drudgery, or it's too mundane, it's too boring. I don't really get that dopamine hit from doing it. So, quite often we can get stuck in that teenage rebellion phase of, if you're going to tell me, I'm not going to do it. But actually that then kind of ends up is a bit of a self-defeating cycle, isn't it?
Really.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So you got started by helping a friend, and then how did it kind of snowball?
Um, I think I was looking for some extra work at the time, and I thought, well, I'm quite good at this. I love working in spaces, and I put a few notices through people's doors. And at the time, I was running an interior design practice that was, you know, around the time of the financial crash, so that was kind of not really blossoming that much. So I set up my professional organising business along the side, and actually that then kind of, you know, and actually I noticed when I talk to people, they seem much more interested in that. Everyone knows someone who's struggling with clutter, or, you know, has a secret, like I've got a friend, but really it's themselves, their friend at home, you know. So it's kind of like, yeah, I think people, it really struck a chord with people's hearts. And then I realized that actually, really, you know, with my psychotherapy background, really like working with people and on a one-to-one in a much more personal way than interior design can be, a bit more impersonal. And so really, and that's where the stories kind of started to come out, was where people started to, you know, you go into someone's home and you're working in their environment, which is incredibly privileged and incredibly private. And then they'll start telling you their stories and their life stories. And that's really where that the kind of depth of the work came in for me, which kind of made me pursue it even more, I think, and really, really enjoy doing it.
Can you share any examples of any of the stories? Maybe something from the book?
There was somebody who I worked with who had this one. This one wasn't in the book, didn't make the book, but she had worked and studying this career that she'd always wanted to do, and the course private organization had gone bankrupt, and so she'd never been able to finish. So she'd put years and years of work and study into this course and never qualified. And so in her home there was just piles and piles of books and research, and she was kind of reaching retirement age. So it was, in a way, what we ended up doing was a little bit of a ritual of an honoring of that part of her life that never really blossomed. And you can understand when you've put so much work into something and so much study and it hasn't gone anywhere, that it ends up being like a frozen thing on the shelf, a frozen piece of time, a frozen piece of your life that you then can't process and deal with because it's very painful. And so really the work was telling the story about this kind of, in a way, this loss or this bereavement that she'd had with this training. And I mean, I've done lots of training myself, and I could completely relate to it. But we did end up doing a little bit of a ritual and gathering some leaves and you know, making it sort of, actually making it conscious. So the idea of having a ritual, and it's not kind of necessarily anything religious, but it's more a kind of a psychological, making something real and sort of really honoring the amount of work that she'd put into that in that time of her life. So yeah, it was very, very moving. There's another story about somebody who'd lost a child, and, you know, when you go through a bereavement like that, something in you freezes inside. Like, the amount of grief is so unbearable that also your life stops. And so when we were going through all the cupboards, I remember pulling out from under the stairs another IKEA bag filled with mail that had never been opened, you know. And you can't just sort of burn it, because in there there might be a pension paper, or there might be something important. So everything needs to be gone through. But in the process of going through all of that, you know, we would talk, and she would tell me about her life, and it was almost like there was some sort of unraveling or undoing of that, or a sort of defrosting of that frozenness, you know, that, and coming to terms with. So it's very, very moving work. And then also, obviously, at the end, unlike psychotherapy work, which is where you just sit and talk and unravel those pieces, you actually get the physical result as well. So, there's two people working on clearing and reorganizing a space. And so not only have you psychologically purged something, you've also physically purged. So, yeah, I mean, I can't kind of like put it into words sometimes. Sometimes it's incredibly almost spiritual, the experience.
I can see why you call yourself a clutter therapist, because the therapy side of it is equally as important.
Yeah.
It must be an amazing. I should think there are some people watching this right now thinking, that's what I need in my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
sorry, go on, Helen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've had people say to me, oh, you really get, it's not just about the clutter, it's about something else. And, and that's, I think, in a way, if I was to say I've got a mission, and part of why I wrote my book was to try and break down some of the shame that people feel around being cluttered. And I mean, we will talk a bit about ADHD because that's what your channel is about. But, this level of shame that people feel about being disorganized or being cluttered is just, it's really, really quite painful to see how hard people are on themselves. And I really hope that my book kind of expresses that to those who read it. And they've told me, you understand. So, and I hope to share that understanding even more, that it's not a shameful thing if you're disorganized or cluttered. It's just something that needs working at.
And shame and beating yourself up is a huge theme in the work that we do, working with ADHD people. Well, we both have ADHD as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, shame, it's that big word. It's just, we mention it quite a lot in the podcast as well. It's huge. And then when I interrupted you a moment ago, I was going to ask you about that link between what's going on in the physical world and what's going on in the person's head. And I feel like you already answered that, but I don't know if you want to say any more about that link between, clutter and mental health or thoughts, those kind of ideas.
I think that, I mean, my mum used to say it to me, and I'm, a cluttered room is a cluttered mind.
I think say that.
I think it, there is truth in that, and it isn't meant to be a shameful thing. It's just like, I think if you've got ADHD, you've got so much going on in your mind, and usually at a very rapid pace, that your physical environment can't keep up with you in a way. I don't know if you've ever been on an aeroplane. And I'm going to get spiritual again in a minute, but some people say that when you fly across the world, it takes your aura a while to catch up with you. And if you've ever heard that, but it's sort of, and that's partly what jet lag is like, you're not embodied. So so it's a bit like that, I think, with ADHD. You're sort of running so fast that your environment can't keep up with you. Do you relate to that at all?
Yeah.
It sounds like a really nice way to put it.
It does, yeah.
And you hear a lot of metaphors about what it's like to have ADHD, and it's very hard to describe what it's like having ADHD to someone who doesn't have it. But that is a nice one, that you're way ahead of your actual physical surroundings. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
So you wrote the book. You've got lots of stories. What got you interested in ADHD, Helen?
Well, one of the things that I do when people contact me is we have a chat. And so I've talked to, I can't tell you, I mean, over 15, 20 years, so many hundreds of people. And I just started hearing the same themes over and over again. And then I'd work with people. And I think intuitively, I knew that actually one of the things that really helps is having somebody there. So I always used to say, look, I actually want to, the reason I do what I do is like, I like being in the room with a person. And it's partly because I can help keep you focused. Because I know that you're just going to go off over there, you're going to go off over there, and you're going to go off and read that letter, and 5 hours later, you've read all of your love letters. And the task at hand, which was to declutter the bookshelf, isn't going to happen. But if I'm there, I can keep you focused. So it's that idea of body doubling, isn't it? where really having somebody there. So all of the people that would talk to me, they say they feel overwhelmed, they didn't know where to start, they struggle with systems, struggle with making decisions, like that thing about prioritizing what's more important, to keep this one or that one. It's just brain freeze. So over the years, I just, and now I just say to people, have you thought about ADHD? Because it's just so common. And I mean, literally, if you were to, pin me down and ask me how many people, I would probably say about 85% of the people that I talk to are either diagnosed or on that scale or spectrum. But again, like I said, there's the creating order and organization, and then there's the quantity of stuff. And that might be ADHD, but it might just be maybe trauma or sentimental kind of attachment to things. So if there's some sort of attachment trauma or something, then it's going to be much harder to let go of things. Yeah.
So in those two circumstances where you've got, sometimes the person might struggle with organizing things, or sometimes the person might have too much stuff, are there different approaches that you take to those two scenarios?
I talk about in my process the Getting Clear method. There's I use the metaphor, and I hope that this kind of resonates with you and your audience. But it's like having an overgrown garden. So if you imagine that your garden is completely overgrown and all you can see is weeds, so you can't see the wood for the trees, you can't see, So the first thing that you need to do is reduce the amount of stuff that you've got, because the less stuff you have, the less stuff you have to manage. Yeah. So if you're, and I think Esther, you've talked about that, the fact that if you have so much stuff, it just makes the task of organization so much harder. So so we start off by doing the weeding and letting go of the weeds, the extraneous stuff, doing a big cull, and then the next bit is the planting plan. So it's keeping the special things that you want to keep. It's keeping your tree and your rose bush and all of the things that you want to keep, but then maybe redesigning the garden so it's easier to maintain. So maybe if you don't have so much grass, or maybe if you have just a few beds or a few pots, it's going to be much easier to maintain. And then of course, then the third part is the maintenance. But so if you've set up a system or a garden that is really easy to maintain, it's going to support you to do the maintenance, which is the chores and the habits and the daily routine. If you're starting off with so much stuff, then like you've done your laundry and you want to put it away, but you can't put it away because your drawer is full, but maybe the drawer isn't full, it's just so jumbled that you can't fit anything in. Then you start putting it outside the drawer, and then it creeps and then you go from a wardrobe to a floordrobe and so it goes on. So it's really, I think, for people with ADHD, having the less stuff you have is going to be much easier. But again, a lot of people are very creative and they have lots of creative projects on the go. So one of the things that I teach, I have an online program. I teach people that completing a task is something that's, I know, really difficult, but it's something that is really important, because otherwise, you'll have half your dinner cooked or half the cake baked or half the, so we need to kind of, like, in a way, learn some skills and strategies that aren't coming naturally to us. So, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's important to finish the task, and sometimes it's okay. I remember having a client once, and they were worried about not finishing crochet projects, I think it was. And I said to them, why do you have to finish? And in that case, they were doing the crochet for fun. It wasn't because it wasn't like cooking a meal where they had to eat it at the end of it or make sure their family got fed. So I think, I absolutely take your point, and I think there are some times when you can say, no, it's okay to just enjoy the process as well, But in terms of clutter, yes.
Yeah, because otherwise you've got, I mean, a classic thing, isn't it, is come back from holiday, dump your suitcase down and not finish the holiday, which is put the suitcase away and do the laundry, because then it ends up being, another pile that then adds to the chaos. And so if you can just on a few things that are kind of like, and usually it's just stuff that we don't want to do, isn't it? It's like, who, you want to go on the holiday, but who wants to do the laundry after the holiday? It's like, and again, then that links in with a dopamine. It's like, if there isn't a dopamine hit here, then that's gonna be a struggle to get on and get done. So I think one of the things I like to try and think about is like, can we think about doing these things, the maintaining bit, which would be mowing the lawn and watering the plants, as a self-care activity rather than a chore, like, I don't want to, I don't feel like it, So if we can reframe it in a way that it is a sort of a gift to yourself. So when we talk about, if I come back to my go to bed at night and my bedroom's tidy, it makes me feel more at peace and more rested. Or if I can, just those sort of simple maintenance things. But it doesn't have to be like a stick to beat yourself with. That's really absolutely not what it is, because that is kind of counterproductive.
I like the idea of reframing. I think we do a lot of reframing in coaching, don't we? To help people think about things in a different way. And I love the idea that you just mentioned about it's not a chore, it's self-care.
Yeah, self-care.
I'm sure people out there watching this must be thinking, oh, that's a really amazing way of looking at it.
Yeah, and also we have our mobile phones, don't we? And they only or our laptops, and they only last so long before they need recharging. And if our environment, which is where we go to recharge, is aggravating us, and you walk in the front door and you go to bed at night and you've got that nag going, oh, I'm such a failure, I've got to declutter, or I've got to tidy up, that is going to then drain you. And so it becomes a bit of self-sabotage, and it's really difficult because it isn't easy. If you've got ADHD, it's not an easy thing. So it's so important when we're learning new skills and strategies to be kind to ourselves, in that. And you may never be a master of housekeeping, but it doesn't matter. It's just sort of, what can you do with your systems or your maintenance that is going to make it easier for you to unwind and de-stress.
Absolutely. And you, as you've been talking about the piles, I don't know if we've mentioned the phrase doom piles, but lots of people call them piles doom piles, and for the very reasons that you've mentioned. Really, there's sort of the sense of shame that a pile can give you, and you've got doom piles.
I have a few of them. Yeah.
Some people have doom cupboards where they just kind of throw it in and shut the door on it.
Mine's the bottom drawer of my wardrobe.
Yeah, that is quite a doom cupboard.
Yeah. And the irony is that when you open it, the broom falls out and knocks you on the head.
Yeah.
Actually, it isn't. I think the other thing is that thing about out of sight, out of mind. That often a sense of order, if it's so completely out of sight, then the sense of, I'm not going to be able to know where it is. I'm going to panic. I'm not going to be able to see it. I'm not going to be able to find it. But if you've created a map that's very, very clear. So I always talk about, for example, if every drawer is really, very clear, and even if it means labeling it, and I've worked with clients before where we've labeled, like, this is underwear, this is stationery, this is light bulbs, so that you can train yourself to know where things are. It's going to be much easier, but it is an issue, the out of sight, out of mind thing.
It's huge. I think I have that thing that you just mentioned, where if you put it away in a cupboard, you're never going to see it again. And it is true for some things, like my really expensive coffee maker, which I don't see from one to the next. But if it's something really, like, that's why my little cheaper coffee maker is on the top, because I know where it is and I just use it because I know it's there. But there have been a few things. Have you ever had done?
I bought a drill and it's currently been in my bottom drawer for nearly a year.
The
bottom drawer of doom. Yes, I haven't seen it for quite a while, actually.
I got it out the other day.
Oh yeah, you used it the other day. See, I still haven't used it, I don't think.
But would you use it if it was out then?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't really have much DIY to do. I'm not really sure why I put it in the first place.
It's not the sort of thing that you necessarily going to, want to use daily, is it? I mean, things like
true.
pens and scissors and things like that we maybe use daily. So that's the other thing that I often see is that I go into someone's house and they've got their Christmas decorations are stored here, or their food is stored right at the bottom, and there's sort of like there's not very much logic. So what you want to do is have the drill at the bottom of the cupboard, because you're probably not going to use it that often. But
No, that's true. Yeah.
If you mentally know where you need to look for it, that's the thing. It's being able to think about where things are rather than look for where things are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like an innate knowledge of where things are rather than, oh my God, I know it's in here somewhere.
Yeah. And then doing the sort of the panic search looking, which then creates a big pile of chaos, which if you've had a bit of an adrenaline rush because you're looking in a panic, you're then not going to want to sort it out. So, that then kind of adds to the sense of chaos.
And
it's
probably shame.
Yeah.
And the shame. Yeah.
I mean, so many of us lose stuff all the time. It's one of the most common things that we talk about is just losing stuff. And things that you probably do need every day, like your keys.
Yeah, I lost my car keys for an hour earlier.
Did you?
Yeah.
I mean, you quite often lose your wallet as well, don't
you?
Yeah. So, and I've got like a bowl by the front door where I keep my keys.
Excellent.
And then 99% of the time they're there. And I think a lot of people do have that kind of routine plus a place, like a physical place, which really, really helps as well. And I suspect that part of the decluttering is around spreading that out across your entire environment in some ways.
Yeah, so if you've got, we would call that a landing station, where you come in the house and you put your keys and your wallet or your, critical things that you need as you go out of the door, you put them by the door on the landing station. So then you know where to find them. But you need to follow that system through. Because, I mean, we can sabotage it, can't we? Where we come in the door and then we don't put our keys there. And that thing about losing things is so classic, because I think if you're running at 100 miles an hour and your space is not keeping up with you, then I need some more sellotape. I need some more sellotape now. And you can't find it, and you haven't got time to find it because maybe you're running late. Then you go and buy some more sellotape, and then you buy some more. And then the classic thing when we do a declutter job is that there's 10 rolls of sellotape, because there's been more than 10 occurrences where we couldn't find the sellotape, so those sorts of things. And you can think, well, that's just one example, but what if there was then the shoehorn, or what if there was then the bottle opener, and and so it goes on. And that's why we end up with multiple things. And when you've got multiple things, you've got more stuff than you can manage.
Yeah.
But if you simplify, and I know this sounds really easy in theory, and I don't want to I don't want to undermine how difficult it is, because I've witnessed it and I know. But if you keep it down to one roll of sellotape and it has its place, then you're less likely to kind of lose it.
And we might think of that as also being ADHD tax as well. So we talk about ADHD tax as well, which is all the money we waste because of various things like food at the back of the fridge, which we didn't use, or forgetting to cancel subscriptions, and buying 10 rolls of sellotape when you've already got one could very much count towards the ADHD tax as well.
You call it ADHD tax. I mean, I can't tell you, because my husband's got ADHD and he's always leaving food at the back of the fridge, and it drives me nuts. Because it's like, oh no, that's sort of, because if it's not right in front, then it's
then it doesn't exist. Yeah.
So there's the ADHD tax, a bit like Lewis's drill, really, and my coffee maker and various other things. Spending money on things that turn out to be not
as useful as they could be,
because we wanted a dopamine hit, or not using things because we didn't know they were there.
Well, I think quite often
subscriptions thing as well is a nightmare.
It is that often being in a hurry and then not being able to find it because of the chaos, and then having to just go out and buy the extra one. One of the things I like using is transparent containers, because I think if you've got that, if I don't see it, I don't know it's there. So if you can see that box is, oh yes, that's the box with Christmas decorations. I think it's something to do with being more visual, perhaps. Not reading the label that says Christmas decorations, you just see the Christmas tinsel in the box, and then baubles. So yeah, it is, yeah.
Amazing. So you live in an ADHD house then?
I do. I do. We have different a different relationship with ADHD bits. It's more the ADD than the hyperactive thing, but it's definitely a challenge. Two neurodiverse people.
It feels like you've been surrounded by ADHD the whole time. Did you realise it, or have you only recently realised it?
Oh, I mean, I realised it maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, when these common themes, and when working with people in their home, and they would get up and I would say, no, you got to come back. Literally, I would be kind of getting people, oh, I know, but I know where this goes. And it would be, it's so funny and also really touching, because it's like, but I know where this goes. It's like, but this thing has a home. I must put it away. So that, and I could be chasing people around the house saying, no, you've got to come back. Because the way I work is that I set my clients up to be the decision makers, and it's keep or go. And then, we would then set up the planting plan around. So it's planting just that.
That's a good.
It's the planting plan. Yeah, it's everything has a place for everything. Everything gets planted. Yeah. So the distraction thing, and I talk a lot about. Sometimes when I run my group, we're on a journey and we're all going up the mountain and we're at different places, and you might be looking at the top of the mountain now, going, "Oh, I'm never going to get up there." So I say, well, let's just look at the first base camp. But when I'm going up the metaphorical mountain with a load of ADHD people, neurotypes, they're going off down that road, and let's go and look after that butterfly, or so it's like I'm always saying, come back over here, we're going on this journey right now. And in a way it's quite difficult, because that butterfly is a beautiful moment, isn't it? And it's something that you might want to pursue. And I think that comes down to the difficulty prioritizing. Like in the moment, the butterfly is, I want to go and follow and look at that butterfly. Whereas actually the commitment was to walk up the mountain. So that's the thing that I see so often in my work. And, fortunately people trust me to guide them up the mountain. And it's a good journey.
I think a lot of people in coaching appreciate when you keep them on track. I think that you're their coach. They trust you, as you said. They want you to be that guide and that person. And I would be very surprised if anyone was upset at you taking them away from the butterfly. Give them a second or two and then bring them back. And I'm sure most people would be really pleased about that.
Yeah.
What advice can you give to people who are watching today, who are thinking, oh, so much of this resonates. I have clutter, I have doom piles, I can't find anything. Is there any just little bits of advice? I mean, obviously buy the book, that'd be one thing.
Yeah.
But and hear other people's stories, obviously, because you said it was not so much a how-to, but more of a stories and then some tips and things. But is there any advice you can share today for people?
I think the first piece of advice that I would share would be to be kind to yourself. Any sort of change, you need to understand that it's not there for a negative reason. You know, if you're struggling with organization and order and clutter, there's a reason, and that reason in a lot of cases is ADHD. Sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's past, sometimes it's just learned behaviors that we grew up in an environment that was chaotic and we didn't learn how to create order. So first thing is really kind self-care and kindness, and reframing the drudgery or the mundane, the world that kind of lags behind you, as an environment that you can take. By taking care of that, you're taking care of yourself. So the self-care, setting goals and priorities. So if you're on a journey up a mountain, where are you headed? Are you headed to first base camp or to the summit? You know, where are you headed? And so when it gets hard, because it will probably get challenging, that you recommit with that part of you. So we talk a bit about, and it was Robert Fritz who talked about primary choices and secondary goals. And sometimes we have a primary choice, which is to go up the top of the mountain, and our secondary choice is always what we have to do in order to get there. And sometimes what we have to do in order to get there is to go through the heartburn or the leg burning of walking up the mountain. So sometimes actually achieving what we want to achieve takes a little bit of hard graft. I feel that a lot of people with ADHD, they love the inspiration part of the cycle, but when it comes to application, it's a little bit harder.
Can be, yeah.
Not always,
unless
but
you're focused.
Unless you're super focused, yeah. So if you've reframed it and said, look, actually, this is just domestic drudgery, you know, I get it, but I need to do it because I'm an adult now and I want to take care of myself, then it's going to be easier. Get a body double, somebody who can do it with you, you know, whether that's a coach, whether or not it's a friend, whether or not it's, somebody who can just help you stay on track. I created a product called the Home Declutter Kit, which is, and I say it's a practical tool for a practical problem. And that is really about the weeding stage. It's about the decision making. So the more stuff that you can let go of, the more you're going to make your life a lot easier. And then habits, learning habits and learning those systems to keep it maintained. And I do think that's, and slow down. One of the things that I've noticed is that I think, and I don't know if this is your experience, but sometimes with ADHD, it's like you've got two brains. One is the one that's doing the thing, and the other one is running off doing something else at the, like.
It's funny you should say that, Helen, because we do have two brains, or at least we have two neural networks that are conflicting with each other. The task positive network and the default mode network. And they are literally in conflict.
Yeah. So the two brain thing is like, if you can understand that and work with it better and help, get somebody who can help you stay focused just while you're on a specific task, because you've got that hyper focus ability. But if you don't enjoy kind of decluttering or house kind of related stuff, then what other strategies are there that you can use? The other brain's going to be rushing off onto the next kind of thing. So Esther's smiling, so I can see that you can.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking of reward, accountability, and novelty. So that's a little acronym that people can think of when they're thinking about how to get themselves a bit more motivated when it comes to doing a task that is not that interesting normally to them. So the reward thing can be very helpful. Like, what am I going to give myself at the end of this, or a walk or a chocolate bar or something like that. The accountability thing, body doubling, amazing. Lots and lots of people really benefit from body doubling, and there are a few apps out there as well, body doubling apps. And there are some with where you can be matched up, sort of dating styly, with somebody to body double with, not dating obviously. But there are others where there's recordings of people doing things that you can go along with. I know there's a housework one, I can't remember the name of it now, where people can do the chore with the person in the video, so that's quite interesting. And then there's the novelty thing as well, which could be around buying new storage. I think that's maybe why I haven't one of the reasons I got into like not having a cluttered place was just because I started buying things to store things in, which is a bit of dopamine, a bit of retail therapy.
Yeah, I mean, on my course that I run, we do a live declutter session together. So exactly the doubling thing. And at the end, I always say, right, treat time, everybody, it's time for a treat. Because when you've done something really hard, like uninteresting, and you've really pushed yourself, and then you really need, as you say, that reward. It's so important, even just from a pure psychological level, beyond neurodiversity. If you think that you've got an inner child within, and you've just made your inner child sit there for 3 hours and do some really hard decision making, they're going to want to go out and play. So you need to look after yourself and let your child self go out and have a play, and have a treat for doing that, for doing their homework, if you like.
For sure.
That's a lovely way of looking at it. It's like release your inner child, do some adulting, then do some childing.
Yeah,
I love that. Any other words of wisdom or advice before we head into the end of the session?
I think the most complex thing is if you have trauma, childhood trauma, and ADHD. It then gets really, really challenging. And I mean, I just want to come back to the self compassion side of things, really. And I do think that, I think it's kind of interesting, just topically and politically, how quite a few celebrities have come out and talked about how they have mental health issues. Like if you think about Ruby Wax or Stephen Fry, but there's very few people that will actually come and say they've got a cluttered home, or that there's still a huge amount of shame. And the thing about, often people will not invite people in to the house. They'll I've had clients say to me, if someone rings on the doorbell, I put my coat on and I pretend as if I'm going out the door. It's literally, so the isolation, then the shame is so, and I really want to kind of break that down, that I really feel that a lot of my clients are incredibly creative, incredibly intelligent, and very talented, and they may be brilliant at work. And actually that's what I did my master's on. My dissertation was about, how can you be ordered and capable at work, but cluttered at home. And I think, Esther, you were saying that there was some reasons for that from the ADHD perspective, but possibly some of it masking.
I was going to say, a lot of people use all their spoons at work, and then when they got home, they've got no spoons, no energy left to do anything else, because they've been like throwing themselves into it to try and appear to be like everyone else, and as capable as everyone else.
And then they phone me up and say, well, I can't understand, why can I be a top lawyer at work, or a dentist, or a doctor, high performing individual, and I come home and my home is a mess? And it's, and I think I love your spoons idea. It is it's partly, it's all spent, it's all gone, there's nothing much left for me. But also from a psychological, from a therapeutic perspective, we would say that we take our performative self to work quite often, and our emotional self is the part that's in the home. So that's why it ends up becoming quite complex in terms of throwing things away or letting things go, because our emotional world is the part of us that lives at home. So it gets very complex and incredibly fascinating. And as I say, I've been studying it for years. So, I just want to say that everybody is an individual, and the reasons why they are where they are, are their reasons. But, help is out there if people need to get help. And it's so much easier to start from a base level and under a pile of clutter. So, if you can start with things being really where everything's in its place, and you've got your home back into order, you can then start with the steps of okay, so can I just do that? I don't know, just have a little game with myself, make it into a game where I do the washing up before I go to bed. And I always talk about that with my clients, and I say, look, you know, my husband, I'm really lucky, he does the cooking and I do the washing up, and I'm happy with that. I put the radio on, it's my zen time, I shut the door and I go into my own little zone, and it's my own game. You know, it's not a chore, it's just the thing I do to chill at the end of the day. So if you can reframe and change the way you view it, then it's going to make it much easier.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's great seeing you both nodding. So I think you're kind of like, I'm hoping that some of your audience are going to be kind of nodding as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
The emphasis on self-care and compassion has been huge in this conversation, and that's what we talk about so much.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, really.
It is, and there's still so much more that we need to know and understand, and there's still so much stigma. Still, I think that, you know, hopefully conversations like this will break that down. But you know, if you're ADHD or ADD or neurodiverse and you're struggling with clutter, then it's completely understandable, really.
Yeah,
when you've
absolutely.
got two brains and they're running at a speed of light, and you can't, and your environment and your mundane world can't really keep up with you.
It's a lovely way of looking at it, and I hope that really helps some people out there.
For sure.
It's helped me as well.
Yeah, I mean,
your world can't keep up with you, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Helen, we're just coming towards the end of our conversation now. Is there? We're going to put some links. We'll put a link to your book, obviously, underneath, and the course you mentioned as well.
Yeah, I've got 2 courses that I run. One is quite an intensive one. It's called the Clutter Shift program, and I run it 3 times a year. And then there is more of an online course called Simply Declutter. Both of them are on my website, which is helensanderson.com, and you can link that below.
Yeah, we will.
Cool.
And then there's my home declutter kit, which is a practical tool for the practical problem, which is available on Amazon or from my website. So there's lots of ways that I can help. And, you know, I just hope that people do find the courage and can't step over the shame, because ultimately, you know, no one's going to judge you. I think we're judges harder on ourselves than other people.
Yeah.
Very true. Thank you. And on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You've been amazing. We're really, really grateful to you for coming along today. And if you've got any comments,
leave them below. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. And Helen, you know, anything you want to share with us, we'll share with our network as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.